everybody, Steve Hootman here at the Rhododendron Species Botanical Garden. It's April 2nd, and today we're going to be having a good look at 4 species, which I call basically the Suchoanense Califidum complex. So that's a subgroup within Subsection Fortunea. So Subsection Fortunea is a group of kind of the classic good garden plants within the genus Rhododendron, things like Orbiculari and Williamsianum, Griffithianum, Fortunei, Decorum, etc., etc. And the early spring bloomers are all distinct genetically. That's something we've just learned recently. And so today we're going to look at that complex of 4 species. We'll start with the main one, which comes from central China. It's called Suchoanense, which means from Sichuan. And Suchoanense is distinguished by these lovely pale pink flowers that are generally flushed cream or yellow at the base with no blotch. And these 4 species are big leaves that can be grown back east because they're primarily from central China, which is a more continental climate versus a monsoon climate. They're a bit tougher, so they're more hardy and they're more heat tolerant. And so these are species that you can grow back east, say in Massachusetts or North Carolina, and say, oh, I have a nice big leaf rhododendron. It's not a Rex or a Sino Grande or a Maccabianum, but it's a larger leaf species. They all bloom about the same time. Suchoanense comes from Hebei into Sichuan. Often confusion trying to distinguish Suchoanense from Califidum. They are closely related, but you can always tell Suchoanense from Califidum because Suchoanense has a capitate stigma, which is the end of the style, the terminus of the style. It's like a little head, a little round knob, whereas in Califidum you'll see it has a discoid stigma, which is kind of like a little plate on the style. So they're quite different that way. So if you're confused in your own garden, if it has a little round knob on the end of the style, that's Suchoanense. If it has a disc on top of the style, that's Califidum. And it has this nice flower, as I said, but with no blotch. It has an oblanceolate leaf with a pretty obvious layer of indumentum on the lower side of the leaf, at least on the midrib, basically on the midrib. So that's Suchoanense. It forms, I've seen them as 30-foot high trees, but it forms this big, broad, spreading shrub, again, which blooms sometimes late February, but definitely it's more of a March thing, and we've had a cool spring this year, so they're still hanging on a bit. Now we will go look at its close relative, Rhododendron Prevernum. Now we'll have a look at our second species, which is actually really closely related to Suchoanense. This is one called Rhododendron Prevernum, which means spring blooming, basically. And it grows in pretty much the same zone where you would find Suchoanense in the wild, Sichuan, into Hebei, and the surrounding areas. They actually grow together in the wild. And you can distinguish Prevernum from Suchoanense because the flowers of Prevernum have a large purple blotch at the base. The other main factor is the fact that the midrib is glabrous or smooth or non-hairy, whereas the midrib on Suchoanense on the lower surface of the leaves is covered with a layer of tomentum or fuzzy hairs, and it does not have the blotch. Also, Prevernum tends to have a smaller, more narrow leaf, not so oblanceolate, but it is also as hardy as Suchoanense, and this is one of the few larger leaf species that's hardy on the east coast of North America. So people can grow them. These are large, ancient old plants, but they're tough as nails, easy to grow. Another fun thing with Prevernum is it tends to have really red pedicels, which are the flower stalks, as you can see. And that's maintained when it goes into fruit, and then the smooth, woody capsule that forms, which is the fruit in the autumn, is also bright red. So Prevernum, if you don't deadhead it, looks like it's covered with red berries in the autumn, which is pretty spectacular. Now we'll look at a plant which some experts consider to be a hybrid between Prevernum and Suchoanense, and what other people would say is an intergradation between the 2 species. So that's a plant called Rhododendron Geraldii, which is right here. This is the intermediate or the hybrid between Suchoanense and Prevernum, and it has characteristics of both species. So you can see it does have a blotch, not as strong as in Prevernum, and it does have some hair on the midrib beneath. So it has the blotch from Prevernum and the indumentum on the midrib from Suchoanense. So Again, that's either a hybrid between the two or just an intermediate form between the two, because Ernest Wilson, an early plant hunter who discovered these in Hubei, thought they were the same species. So he said that's just variation within a species. Now we don't really look at it that way, but he sort of has a point. Anyway, that is a plant called Rhododendron X Geraldii, or Rhododendron Sutronense variety Geraldii. And that's the one you most commonly see because it's quite vigorous, and you get the really large flowers, bigger than you get in Preverum, that's from the Sutronense, but you have the nice purple blotch, which makes it very attractive. Next, we'll look at the Califidum complex, which to me is one of my favorites of the entire genus. I love these early fellows, but Califidum to me is stunning, and we're going to check that out next. Okay, the next species we're looking at, species number 3 on our little subcomplex here, is one called Califidum. And first we're going to look at kind of the classic Califidum that's been in cultivation for over 100 years. It's basically the Western Sichuan form with these big broad leaves, sort of a matte finish, and the big beautiful pink or white flowers, almost always with a blotch. Stunning thing. This is very classic. This is like the pink Califidum. We have the white one up the hill. It's not quite out yet, but that is what we thought of until about 30 years ago as being Califidum. In 1995, I was traveling with Peter Cox and Ted Millay, and we went quite a bit further east into China from Sichuan and collected Califidum again, and it's quite different looking. We'll go look at that. As I was mentioning, Califidum has been recollected. We found it quite a bit further east from where it was historically known in Sichuan. This is my collection from '95. The leaves are quite a bit longer and a little bit shinier, quite different in appearance. As if you look back at the last one we looked at, which was very typical, and the flowers are actually much more showy. They're larger. Most of these seedlings, these are now 31 years old, but these seedlings, I would say, they're grown from seed, show quite a bit of variation. A lot of them are candy striped. We don't have very many flowers on the wild ones this year, but every one of them is spectacular. If you can come out soon and see this, they're really a striking flower, candy striped flowers. Just a stunning thing. Again, bone hardy, and people get confused. Is it Sutronense or is it Califidum? Because the foliage is sort of similar. They both bloom in spring. They're both hardy, etc., etc. A lot of them that don't come from here anyway are actually crosses between Sutronense and Califidum, so it gets really confusing. But an easy way to distinguish Califidum from Sutronense and Preverum is because Califidum has a very obvious discoid stigma, which we'll come and see. So it's basically a plate on a stalk. That's the female organ where the pollen lands and hopefully grows down into the ovary. So in Califidum, it's discoid. So you have like a frisbee on a stalk, whereas in Sutronense, it's capitate, which means a head. So it's just a little round knob on top of the stigma. So on top of the style, the stigma. So that's the easiest way to tell them apart if you're confused. Now we'll go look at another variety of Califidum. This is variety Califidum, but we also have Califidum variety Openshawen, and it's very interesting as well. So this then is Califidum variety Openshawen, which was described as being a Califidum with smaller leaves and less flowers, but we're growing a few different collections of it here at the RSF from the wild, and I have not found that to be the case. It is quite distinct in terms of its foliage though. If you compare this with the two forms of Califidum that we've looked at already, the leaves are quite a bit smaller, quite a bit more narrow, and they're very glossy. But as you can see here, the flowers are almost identical, or basically virtually identical, with the blotch and the large discoid stigma on top of the style. Very beautiful thing. We have about 24 or so seedlings grown from a wild collection from '95, which are now mature. Some of them are white, some are really good pink, some are candy striped, but always with a nice big blotch. Stunning things. That's Califidum variety Openshawen, which I think should be named as a distinct species because it doesn't really fit the type description even, which is from a mountain called Wawushan in Sichuan. we'll go look at another form of that species next. This is another form of Califidum variety Openshawanum from the same seed collection that we just looked at with the flowers. But this seedling came out with really striking foliage, as you can see here. Super long and narrow, and it's really glossy. And when the new foliage comes out, it's kind of a golden copper color, not copper, but a golden green. It's a really striking plant in foliage, even this time of year. But it has the same flowers as Califidum and Openshawanum. Look at that texture though, it's like something from the subtropics. And I would grow this even if it never flowered. So that's, again, Califidum variety Openshawanum. Okay, and now we'll finish up with our fourth and final species. This is a relatively new introduction. Preverum, Sutronense, and Califidum have been in cultivation well over 100 years now. But this one has just come into us, the cultivation, in the last 20 years or so. So it's a species called Jing Shanica, because it comes from the Jing Shan, or the Jing Mountains of Jiangxi province, which is way over in eastern China, not too far inland from Shanghai actually, which is pretty amazing. And that's the only place that we know of where it occurs. It is obviously a Califidum relative. You see these big, beautiful leaves that look very much like Califidum, but you know, if you compare them, they're distinct for sure. What's really different is the flower. So this is basically the eastern form of Califidum is one way I look at it, that's been separated from the main range of Califidum for quite a while and has speciated out. The flowers are a really unique, weird pink-purple color that you don't see often in the genus Rhododendron, and it is keyed or separated from Califidum by the flower shape. So it's a hard thing to see. But again, it's one of those things, if you look at it compared with Califidum, okay, yeah, those are two different things. And as you can see, just like its close relative Califidum, it has the big discoid stigma on top of the style. So not a head, but a nice little flat plate right on top. See, it's very close to Califidum. That's a really new one. We've been selling this for a few years now. Should be bone hardy, just like the other three species. Again, a good early bloomer with these really uniquely colored flowers. And this will become a massive plant in time, of course. So that is one called Jing Shanica, which is quite rare in cultivation and really rare in the wild. In 2018, I went on an expedition to Jiangxi to try and see this in the wild, just to see what it looked like. And we couldn't find it, so it's super rare in the wild. Most of the ones we're growing in the garden are from seed from a Chinese botanical garden, but they are pure, so I don't have a problem